Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 63 of the Lorethrough. Again, this is an episode where I, by mistake, didn't record the audio for my voice, my narration. I messed up. I did a whoopsie. It's all bad news bears from here on out. Not really. By episode 65, it should be back to normal. And I have learned from my mistake because I'm going to be so terribly paranoid about not having my mic on. I recorded the 3 episodes back to back, and I did a good job. I felt like I had really good rants and dialogues, and they're the most coherent that they've maybe been the entire playthrough. And it's not recorded. It's gone. I have no proof. You just have to take my word for it, and if you don't take my word for it, well, that's fair. Because I have no proof. Nothing to back it up. But here we're going to look at the Dectus medallion, right? Left half of the split medallion depicting the Erdtree. Brandishing the medallions with both halves conjoined will activate the Grand Lift of Dectus, connecting the Altus Plateau to Liurnia. The right half is said to reside in Fort Faroth in the Dragon Barrow, to the east. And sure enough, we are in the far east. That's what I'm exemplifying here with the map. It is going to be a little bit liberating recording the audio and not having to worry about too much of the gameplay. The gameplay will go at its own place, but yeah, so we're looking at the fort there. To the east, it is an eastern fort, and we look down to where Redmane Castle is, but we can't even see it despite the storm. And we see a huge dragon and another flaming barrier to keep out the Scarlet Rot. And little dragonlings, 2 of them there, that we can see easily. They look like they're sleeping. Makes me wonder if they're actually active during the daytime and sleeping at nighttime. That would make sense. But I don't think I've ever put that together in my head. Never came to that conclusion. It's funny what little things dawn on you that were probably horribly and abundantly obvious to everyone else, but just didn't click to you for years, right? Like the phrase taken for granted, and instead me as a small child saying take it for granted, like The Rock. Horrible child. Not until I saw it spelled out that I realized I'd made a grave mistake. But if you say it quick enough, and with the accent that I have in my part of the United States, yeah, easy to ignore. So earlier we saw the big old dragon Grail yelling, and it created this particle effect on my character where I have this sad, drooping, red particle effect around the character, and I'm showing off the absorptions right now and how they are lower. In lightning's particularly low, probably thanks to the rain, of course. And so here we are looking at Grail. She's huge. I recommend at this point that you go take a look at Zully the Witch's YouTube channel. They have a couple videos where they're comparing the largest dragons in FromSoft installments, and Grail is certainly one of the largest. Grail is colossal. In fact, when Grail is set in a normal animation pattern as opposed to being laid out upon the Dragon Barrow plateau up here, it lags the whole game. Computers, games, consoles, they have a really hard time rendering its movement because it's so huge. And the detail's pretty good. The poly count's pretty good. It's not insane, but it's good. It's not like a low poly game, so there's a lot going on. And Grail will lag the mess up. So it seems that instead of having an actual boss fight, which they might have had planned at one point, hard to say what was going through their minds in development, they instead decided to plant Grail in the planet and just leave her there. And she gets to roar on occasion and move as little as possible to keep the game running stable. And the game is significantly more stable now than it was at release. I really appreciate that. They've definitely put a lot of time, a lot of effort. I've even noticed that it disconnects far less than it did initially for multiplayer. But we're going to take the Reduvia, because Grail has a stupidly high amount of health she does. And we're going to find a place to bop her. I think it takes me a moment of experimenting on her tail to find a spot that can hit her consistently, because the Reduvia is short, and the hitbox for her tail is a little odd. It's not the same as it is visually. But yeah, I can slap her, and it seems like every other swing is just not connecting. Yeah. So I decided to go on the inside. I feel like the inside, standing on the big flat mushroom there, that's the golden spot if you have a short weapon. Yeah. There we go. Them's the hits. And we're going to be here for a bit. We're just going to watch, and I'm going to try to find stuff to ramble about. There's 13k damage-ish, plus some, thanks to the bleeds. yeah, just have a bleed implement when you do this. I think I may have shown, according to the map, that one of the best ways to travel, not best ways to travel, one of my favorite routes to take when I play this game on a fresh character, and I'm trying to do things legitimately, is I like to go get Torrent, and then I like to go through Limgrave and Weeping Peninsula, grab all the relevant sites of grace that are nearby, and then just go for Sacred Tears and Golden Seeds. It's kind of what I go for primarily, unless there's a beetle conveniently on the way. I like stocking up on health items, making sure that it's plenty strong. I like to go to the Third Church of America and get the Wondrous Physic, and then I take the teleporter behind it, and I go all the way to Northern Dragon Barrow by the Bestial Sanctum, and I go south along the road. I get that specific seed as well. I cross one of the bridges, whichever one I feel like I can do, and then I go to Lene's Rise, which is the Wizard Tower where we'll see the future, get the Memory Stone there, and then I go past and get to Fort Faroth, because Fort Faroth has a talisman you will want for an early build, and I recommend using that talisman until about level 60 is a fair time to use it, and it's wonderful. It's a very good talisman, even if you don't have any other slots. If you have one slot early on, it's a very good item to get. And of course, I would recommend grabbing some sort of bleed weapon across your journeys of prepping to play the game after grabbing all those health items. And come here. Hopefully you have a golden pickled foulfoot. There's a couple you can grab in Limgrave. And then you'll come here, and you'll kill the dragon with all your bleeds. You'll pop the gold pickled foulfoot when it's about to die, and you'll get the big money. I have the scarab as well, in addition to the gold pickled foulfoot. So when the bleed goes off, I'm going to get a huge payout. I think if you combine the gold pickled foulfoot with the golden scarab, it's a total of 50% bonus rune gain, which is substantial, especially for an enemy this large. It takes a little bit for her to finish dying. In fact, her dying process is so long that if you kill her probably on the opposite end of her tail and just book it to the Grace and sit down before she finishes dying, she should remain and you should get the payout. There's people who have that timing down. Do I? No. But there's people who do. So here we're going to check out where she was laying down, and turns out all her little dragonlets are well and deceased. There were a whole bunch. It felt like there was 5 or 6 around her head. And even on the other side of the wall, I think we take a look, and they're not there either. So killing them all gave us 5 dragon hearts. Don't know if that's hers plus some of her Chillin's hearts. I personally am under the assertion that Grail's so large that her heart is worth 5 normal dragon-sized hearts. And so it's actually not measured in terms of individual 5 dragon hearts, but 5 dragon heart units nondescript. That is a very fun thought to my brain. A smirk, maybe only for me. But now we can go back to using a more standard kit. We can rest the Grace, and the debuff will be gone. Which the debuff seems to persist. I don't know if she's constantly roaring and just applying it to you even at a distance, or what have you. So I rested the Grace, and I take a look down here just to see if maybe the little dragons respawn. The crappy brown dragons that don't do any element but just lethargically follow you and try to attack you with physical type attacks. They're gone. And it seems that they do not respawn. There's other ones throughout Dragon Barrow that of course respawn, but the ones around Grail that seem to be a part of her pseudo-boss fight, they're definitely gone. So we can go back to wielding our usual things. And now we can do Fort Faroth, which Fort Faroth is interesting. Very interesting. And I don't have a whole lot to talk about till we get to the roof. In the bottom area here, there are a whole bunch of bats, right? Miserable bat creatures, the fleshy ones, the normal ones. They give good money, and they're kind of tough and hard to hit. And there's a lot of them, and some throw poison. And they're just not that fun. I go past them almost every time. The money you eke out from killing them doesn't seem to be worth it. And the time saved just getting farther in the game is far more fun to me. Just making progress. But we get up here, we have a treasure chest, and we take a grab, and it's the Dectus Medallion the right half, so we have both halves of the Dectus Medallion now. And I'm taking a moment to look at my weapons when I should be going to my inventory and grabbing the medallion and looking at its item description. Do I really not look at its description? Do I forget? For shame. Anyway, its item description is almost like the other Dectus medallion that we looked at, except for it references Kenneth Heights Fort to the west of this place. That we need to go there. So, yeah, because this is in the east. I don't know why, ever since I was a small child, I got lefts and rights mixed up really easily, and I shouldn't, right? Anyone with a square, or with a good head on their shoulders, should be able to tell their lefts from their rights. I've gotten better as I've gotten older. But what still gets me to this day is easts and wests I'll easily mix up, and it doesn't make any sense. I look at a lot of maps, I know which one's east and which one's west. Sometimes the brain gets them swapped. The neurological wiring is bad. Anyways, the enemies on top of the roof of Fort Barrowthere are puppets, much like the ones we see in Carria Manor. They are puppets of Radon's soldiers, it looks like. And we'll get a better look at them soon, I believe. We also see Godric foot soldiers tied up, which is an interesting touch, because I mentioned earlier in the last episode that we saw some Banished Knight equipment and some Exiled Soldiers outfits, right? I'm looking at this soldier here. Is he a red? I think he's a red vein soldier, or is he a Carrion soldier? Could not tell. He was missing the side fangs that are on the helmet. We'll kill a couple more later, I believe. I think we work our way back. Okay, so I took a moment to look back in the footage, which was good because I did see more clearly that they are most certainly red mane soldiers. So, no reason to be concerned. It is solved now. We now know that they are red mane soldiers. They do have the side fangs on their helmet. I just missed it at my initial glance at the video. And to be fair, when I am recording this in the software I'm using, the video feed's not huge. It's not most of my screen. It's a part of my screen. The editing software I use for this conveniently has a record function, which means I can sync up the audio with the video relatively easily, which is very helpful. I'm getting destroyed by this rat. I remember him. He's a meanie. I hit him with a lot of uncharged heavy attacks, and that's a mistake. You gotta get him with the charged ones, because they make all the difference in the world. So many heavies. But you need the charged ones, for sure. So I was talking about the soldiers up top, briefly, right? So we see red mane soldiers in the form of Carria Manor style like puppets, and then there's Godric soldiers as well. And here we have a Redigan Soreseal, and I'm sure we'll be looking at that soon enough. But to conclude my thought, hopefully, with the Redigan Soreseal, what am I looking at over here? Oh, I think I'm describing my path there that I mentioned earlier about picking up all the golden seeds, sacred tears. And this is kind of the visual representation of that path that I would take for that. Ignore that phone noise, how unprofessional of me. But yeah, Godric soldiers here. And it's funny because Fort Height had a Dectus medallion, right? And also, this place had a part of the Dectus medallion. So it seems that Godric sent a cadre of soldiers here, and they failed miserably. But here we have the Redigan Soreseal. Do I open up the item description, or am I just looking at it? I think I decide that I'm going to go grab the others and then look at it. Yeah, probably. So I can talk about the other thing. Godric seems to keep things that are important to him far away from himself. He keeps the his Great Rune at the top of the Divine Tower, protected by some golems. He also keeps the Dectus Medallion far away in Fort Height, protected by the bedeviled Godric Knight and a bunch of soldiers. So things that are important to him, he keeps them far away. And so to finish his goal of returning to Lanedell, because in his death dialogue, if you recall, he wishes to return to his home, Lanedell, bathed in rays of gold, right? And so he must have made plans to return. And it seems that returning was difficult, and he was on his way to try to get the other half of the Dectus Medallion. He had sent soldiers here to this particular fort so that he could ascend the lift and hopefully get back to Lanedell. So it seems interesting that he was able to flee, but he was not able to get back. Which is kind of neat. It's a fun little detail, right? Okay. What am I showing off here? What is the gunches of the past showing off? Maybe a little more of the path. Yeah, how you could go all the way to the south and get the golden seed even down there. Possibly. That's probably what I was rambling on about. That's lost now. We will never get that back. Never, ever. But hopefully I can prevent it from happening again. Hopefully just unintentionally. I might do episodes like this in the future where I record over it and talk about the game and the lore and tips and tricks and things like that, but I don't know. I feel like the live experience is a lot of fun too, so I'll definitely be doing more of the live stuff. Then it means I get it done at the same time, so 3 episodes don't take the time of 6 episodes and such. Okay, so we're heading down to the Divine Tower. We're making our way through the Dragon Barrow. Divine Towers are weird. They look like they're made of very weathered stone. They have big, masoned. There's a huge rock formations attached to them as well that just are raw stone, just cropping out of the earth there. Not sure why, or why they would decide to build there. What is its purpose? We don't know the culture behind the Divine Towers. Here I'm skipping some of the lame, crappy brown dragons because they're so wimpy. I'll show off one later, don't worry. That's definitely in the footage. I show off the most important of the bad brown dragons. And down here is pretty important loot, because you get some high-level crafting materials, or upgrade materials. A level 9 Somber Stone. So I think at this point in the recording we have like levels 1 through 5, maybe even 6, and then a 9, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Skip a few, 9. So you just need to figure out what 7 and 8 is. And I probably should do that. That sounds like fun. I'm sure there's guides where you could be like, look up a video, how to get a +9 Somber weapon early game. And it's probably super doable, and starting off a game with a +9 weapon does sound like it would give you a huge advantage, especially since a lot of your damage comes from your upgrade level. Having that early on would be phenomenal. Dragon Barrow map. I forget to read it till the start of next episode. I apologize. I guess I could pull up that description now. If I really, really wanted to. There's nothing stopping me. Might as well. Why not? I can do this. That's what this is for. Doing things in post. Why not? Alright. Dragon Barrow map. I'm looking it up. This search engine is abysmal that I am using. Okay. Dragon Barrow map. Map of Dragon Barrow and environs. The dragons that escaped the Scarlet Rot and made nest of the plateau to Caelid's north. Thus, it was named Dragon Barrow, and none dare to enter. Well, except us. We kill dragons willy-nilly. Oh, here's the part where I am deciding where to put some points because we have a good slew of money, which is good because I lose some money in the next episode, like 100k. I felt bad. Not that bad. Not really. I've gotten over it. I used to feel really bad in like Demon Souls or Dark Souls 1 where I would die and lose any money. Because I was so bad at the game, I just felt abysmal to lose any progress at all in any form. When in all reality, souls, runes, easy come, easy go. It's not that hard to farm more or to just advance in the game. It's not that bad. I decided to go for vigor and like a point of strength and dex or something by the end of it. Or strength and int, I mean. And I think I decided that with that last level, I decided to save it in favor of having a little bit of pocket money, which is a good idea because there's a shop coming up. A very good and grand idea. What was I talking about? What was I rambling about? Dragon Barrow, right. So the dragons came here to avoid the Scarlet Rot, but they didn't go very far. Kind of lame. Kind of lazy creatures. Horrible, lazy creatures, right? I don't like dragons. Hate them. Don't like them. Cowardly. Huge apex predator. Should fight you like a man. Fights you like a pansy. Aerial stuff, breath attacks, the works. That's what dragons are known for. Nothing redeeming about a dragon, I tell you. Oh, I'm probably closing up the episode here, I just realized. Shucks. What am I looking at? What am I looking at? Oh, right. I think I pull out the source seals. Surprised I didn't do that sooner. So we're going to take a moment and look at the source seals now. Because on the Radigan's Scar Seal is smaller than source seal. I always get those mixed up. I don't know why. Probably because it's kind of nonsensical. It's a holdover of Japanese translation. So the Scar Seal is made of an actual eye, it looks like, engraved with an Elden rune, right? Seal of King Consort Radigan, the trellis symbol on the front. These seals represent the lifelong duty of those chosen by the gods. Fair enough. And so we see between the Scar Seal and the Source Seal, and I'm sure I'll show that in a moment, it looks like on the Source Seal, the symbol has deepened. It's created a divot in the eyeball, and it's kind of gross. Kind of very good, very vivid imagery. But we do see that the Radigan's Source Seal, which isn't that hard to get, it's just hidden by location. You can run to it very easily via Portal and Torrent Horse early game. It gives you 20 virtual levels. 5 Vigor, 5 Strength, 5 Dex, 5 Endurance. Very good item, especially if you are pre-level 60. That's when I would recommend using it. So, very good. I was probably supposed to be reading the new description. That's on me. Yeah, it doesn't say too much different. Let me look it up. Because I was supposed to be reading it. I was busy chatting about its visual design. Alright, Radigan Source Seal. So, I'm looking for other things because I think I'm trying to tie Radon to all of this, but I don't think I have the item that would do that. But I can reread the Radigan Source Seal. Oh, there it is. This legendary talisman is an eye engraved with an Elden Rune, said to be the seal of King Consort Radigan. Solemn duty weighs upon one beholden, not unlike a gnawing curse from which there is no deliverance. That's grim, to say the least. It's very grim. It almost makes it seem like being a champion, being consort to Queen Marika, being a deity, essentially. Champion of gold. Radigan had a rough time, that it was really a burden. That he did not... That it was, well, cumbersome, for one. I mean, that's what the word burden means, for lack of a better term. But described as a gnawing almost makes it seem like an illness, a sickness, a disease of a sort. To have divinity upon oneself. To be Elden Lord. Well, that would be fair. There's a lot to worry about. A lot to rule over. A lot to be concerned with. So, definitely something to look into a little more. God, what else could I be talking about? It's probably just comparing the visual design first, and now I'm talking about all this theory. But I seem to do it for so long. I don't think I have any other tangents. I could go on my killing dragons tangent that I was talking about earlier. Dragons are adorable creatures. I should create anti-dragon propaganda to the best of my ability. Soviet-era propaganda posters about how dragons are the worst. Grade A. Maybe I'll get some artist people to do that. That sounds fantastic. Do not like dragons. God, they have so much going for them, but they just muck it all up with their horrible temperaments, their greed. They're a good thing to hate. Hating fantasy creatures is A-okay in my book, because they're not real. Nobody has to feel bad, and people who identify with dragons and would be offended by my anti-dragon rhetoric are people sorely in need of help, because this is all good fun, and I worry for your mental health if you're that... If you tie in that much of your nature with, or your identity with dragons of all things. Ugh. Unsavory parts of the internet I do not dare mention any more of. Alright, so we go to the Cathedral of Dragon Communion, and we take a look, and sure enough, Grail's Roar is here. This is where we naturally learn of Grail's name. Superior Incantation of Dragon Communion channels the power of Grail, the Elder Dragon, an incantation of legendary status. Transforms caster into a dragon to emit a terrible roar, reducing the attack power and defense of nearby enemies. Grail was the mother of all dragons, dwarfing all who stood before her like a looming mountain. So Grail being the mother of all dragons, I expressed doubt, right? I think that she's the mother of all modern dragons that we see. The biped, the vaguely bipedal with the wings being their front limbs kind of dragon that we see mostly. Not like this eternal dragon that we see in front of us, this ancient dragon That's more reminiscent of the Eternal Dragons from the Dark Souls series, this ancient dragon. And like the one that we see in the Church of Dragon Communion, the one that we see here in the Cathedral of Dragon Communion, and like the huge stone one that we saw in our little snapshot of Lanedale. Those seem to be the ancient dragons, and it makes... I doubt that Grail was their mother as well. Doesn't seem to make too much sense to me. But that's okay. She can be the mother of all modern dragons. That's fine. I also wonder where the Stormhawks come from in the lore, because in our world, birds and chickens and things like that, they're some sort of offshoot from dinosaurs, right? And in the world of Elden Ring, their dinosaurs might as well be the dragons, right? The ancient dragons. And so it makes sense that they'd have a sort of modern dragon as their society fell in some capacity, but also makes me wonder about the Stormhawks. Are they a further evolution of the modern dragon? Couldn't say. Working our way up the hill now. Or what am I deciding to do? Oh, I changed course because I remember that we have a place to visit on the southern edge of the Dragon Barrow Plateau. There we are. Heading that way. I get turned around sometimes, despite my hours in the game, but I have a lot to keep track of, notes and lore. Down there we see the dome for the elevator to the Seofra River well, and the ravine it resides in. So we get to see it from a new angle, which is kind of neat that you can be in one place and look up at the cliffs above, and you can actually be on both sides of those cliffs. That's a neat thing that an open world game offers, especially one like Elden Ring. That might be taken for granted in a lot of open world games, but given that Souls games have not been open world until this installment, it's neat. There we have, because I'm behind on my speaking, we saw a saint statue missing his hands with a glowing gash in his chest, signifying he has loot, tasty loot. So we have a dragon here, a crappy brown bad dragon, no elemental attacks, just angry roars and just lethargic physical attacks. And it's really hard to get them angry. They have it feels like their aggression meter is toned down to 1 out of 100. And it's just so lazy. You can hit them with stuff and they don't seem to do a whole lot. They get confused. You can hit them with knives, shards of enchanted glass in the face, and they just do this slow walk. It's so miserable. Look at that attack. It's just so slow. And to be fair, they're probably rotting from the inside out. They're in horrible condition. Or maybe they're young. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. There's a chance that these dragons are just young. And looking at him, he may be physically smaller than the other dragons, like Agheel or Smarag, the glintstone dragon that we saw in Liurnia. You remember. Wonder if this one's physically smaller, if it's supposed to be young. I'm more under the impression that it's rotted somewhat, having to live in this horrible environment of the Scarlet Rot. That it's just lethargic and kind of biding its time till its death. We have no clue how old this thing is. But it looks real shabby for a dragon. Almost like something magnificent was lost, which, to be fair, that's kind of Miyazaki. It's his approach to these games. He always wants to portray something beautiful that is now losing something. Or that it's lost something valuable, important to it. We hit the dragon with some more war crimes, because who's it going to tell? This is a dim-witted dragon. It doesn't know how to call the Geneva Convention or NATO or the UN. We're fine. We can use as many war crimes as we all please. Since the Shattering, no contact with NATO, no contact with the UN. It's fine. Hit him with the freezing pot to make him weaker to damage. Get in there and attack his face. Honestly, always hit dragons in the head if you can. They deserve it. They deserve a good old gob smack. The other dragons are a lot harder. The actual bosses, they're a lot harder to hit in the head. But if you can get those power attacks off on their head, you can break their posture surprisingly easy. But you gotta get the headshots. It feels like their legs are more durable in that sense. Earned 3,400 runes, and now we are able to continue in our journey. Oh boy, we're almost there. We're almost there. So looking around, we see some more equipment. Banished Knight halberds, long swords, modeled shields. Couldn't tell you if they're the leather or the wood ones, but they're the ones used by the exile soldiers. And now this Everjail. The Celia Everjail. I think we check our map in a moment and read that off. We read that as the Celia Everjail. Yeah, there it is. Celia Everjail. So, owned by Celia, and it's a good distance away from Celia, right? It's up the cliff. We went up the cliff to the east thanks to a spirit spring and thanks to Torrent. The normal Joe Schmo in Celia won't be able to do that. They'll have to travel westward and all the way around and then down. All the way around and down. Because there is a way from the west to the east across the chasm, actually, safely. But it's a long route. So if this is truly a Celia's Everjail, not an Everjail simply close to Celia, they would have wanted to put some high priority people in here, and strangely far away. Kind of like Exile, to be forgotten. Because it doesn't look like it has all that much security, but to be fair, Everjails seem to be in of themselves a relatively good security until we go into it. So we send forth the War Crimes to get some free damage. And it's not bad damage. Here I get caught in the edge of it, because it can hurt yourself. And he's got his big old hammer. Rolled too early. And he can go for 3 hits. When we get the Gavel of Haima, we can only go for 2 hits. So he's obviously hacking. He's stolen my IP address, and he's going to dox me to the internet. And that's where we're going to take care of Battle Mage Hughes. So Hughes is an interesting thing, because he is obviously from the Academy of Raya Lucaria. He's another Battle Mage, right? And a mini-boss. He's a little bit tougher, it seems like, than the other one that we fought. But the Celians, if they filled this jail pre-shattering, right? It doesn't make much sense for them to fill the place pre-shattering. Especially with Hughes. There's nothing to indicate that the Academy and Celia were really at odds too much, not at least in a direct conflict that would require needing to have a prisoner of war like Battle Mage Hughes. But the fact that he is a Battle Mage implies that the Academy is in some sort of state of war, of battle. Now, he could have been potentially put here by Godric's men venturing through Caelid in hopes of finding the Dectus Medallion. This is sort of on the way. They could have subdued Battle Mage Hughes just long enough to stick him in the Everjail and hope for the best. You can kind of take whatever theory you want. We don't have anything conclusive on that. But knowing why somebody's in an Everjail is kind of neat. Here I'm looking at the Banished Knight Halberd and the longsword, and in other little patches of equipment we've also seen the modeled pockmarked shield from the exile soldiers of Stormvale. And to be fair, we do see ghosts of those same exile soldiers in the side dungeon attached to the tutorial of in Limgrave. I forget what that dungeon is called, goodness me. But you know what I'm talking about. There's even ghosts of Banished Knights there as well. So it could be a different faction. It doesn't have to be Godric's men, but that's a neat little thought that Godric's men in their march to Fort Feroth before they got toasted by the bats and the soldiers left behind, the carrion puppets, that they might have imprisoned an Academy person here. Another thing that I wanted to mention was that the cuckoos is the symbol on the surcoat of the puppets used by the Carrion Manor, because they're soldiers of the cuckoo, right? And the cuckoos are a bird that practice brood parasitism, right? Which is where the cuckoo will lay an egg in another bird's nest for the other bird to raise. It makes me wonder, is Radigan such a cuckoo? Did he lay those soldiers there to protect from Radigan? Did he give the egg to ruin Renala's life? Many such questions. Well, we'll talk about it more next time, and I hope you have a good day, and bye-bye.